Bungie's Marathon has only sold 1.2 million copies across Steam, Xbox, and PS5, according to estimates from Millennia Analytics. Welcome to Inside Games Daily, the only gaming news show brave enough to actually love Marathon, while also recognizing it might be flopping.
Yeah, flop might be a strong word. You know, it's not a Concord situation, but I can guarantee you Bungie and PlayStation wanted a lot more than 1.2 million sales. But it's not all bad news. Turns out the people that like Marathon, like Bruce and I, actually really, really like it. But we'll get into all that data.
All right. Alinea Analytics' Reese Elliott posted a Substack article yesterday dissecting Marathon's performance, and the news is not great.
Yeah, like we said, Marathon has sold just 1.2 million copies, and that's across all platforms, according to Alinea Analytics estimates.
So if we dig a little deeper, the data shows some interesting trends. For starters, Steam represents a little under 70% of all copies sold, and then the remaining 30% are tilted towards PlayStation 5, which earned about 19% of sales. And then Xbox is in third, obviously, with the remaining 11% of sales.
That's kind of surprising, but also not super surprising given the kind of game Marathon is. It's a gritty, difficult, tech-intensive PC-ass game. But still, this is, I think, a little surprising given the context of recent reports that PlayStation is going to walk back their single-player PC ports.
Yeah, but that's only for single-player games like Ghost of Yotei. So in a way, this kind of somewhat validates their strategy because they're going to port their multiplayer games to PC, but then the single players, they'll keep on PlayStation only.
Yeah, gosh, could you imagine what state Marathon would be in if it weren't on PC at all? Or if it were a platform exclusive? Oh my gosh, it'd have no air to breathe. But yeah, on the topic of PlayStation's supposed strategy of pulling back from PC, we'll have to check. I mean, Death Stranding 2 from PlayStation Studios just launched on PC. So maybe if that has a windfall of sales, PlayStation might change their minds. But just to remind everybody, they haven't officially announced anything yet in that regard, so it's still just in the status of rumors.
That's a good point. All right, so back to the Alinea Analytics report. It goes on to analyze the differences between Marathon and its closest competitor, Arc Raiders. So anyone who's played both games will agree, Marathon is just wretched at onboarding new players.
Yes, it's just one punch to the gut after another for people who try to start Marathon. Not only is the game's UI just a tangle of confusing icons and really intense kind of future terminal aesthetics, makes sense that it's more popular on PC. But good God, the game's PvP is so much more intense. For some reason, players in Arc Raiders are more inclined to cooperate. It is shoot first and annihilate quickly in Marathon.
So Elliot illustrates this point by plotting both Arc Raiders and Marathon's pre-release sales in the 3 weeks leading up to release.
Yeah, this is really cool to see, and you can really tell the difference in people's responses. Arc Raiders Server Slam prompted an 80% jump in pre-release copies sold during its 3-day Server Slam, while Marathon Server Slam only led to a 49% increase.
Oh, that's really interesting. This led to Arc Raiders having double Marathon's Steam footprint at launch, which fueled word-of-mouth growth. And I know for me, when I got onto Arc Raiders, I was like, hey, you know what? People are kind of friendly. When you first started Arc Raiders. Not really anymore. I mean, there are some fun, friendly lobbies, and of course, they have the friendly matchmaking in Arc Raiders. But Marathon has never been like that, ever.
Yeah, I feel like you're also less inclined to run into other players in Arc Raiders, at least when you're starting. So you kind of have more time to get into the feel of the game, find your footing, explore at your own pace. But yes, in Marathon, it seems like they've given other players a lot more tools to find you because, I mean, they make you shoot. They give you things you have to shoot at. So yeah, the bloodthirsty murder hobos out there can hunt you down. And if you're not ready for that, they will kill you over and over.
So while Marathon is not for everyone, it is actually extremely for the people that it is for. And that is one thing that I've seen across the internet as a whole for Marathon, is that I know that we titled this episode as Marathon a flop or Marathon's flopping, something like that. But people really love this game.
Yeah, that's the weird thing. Creative success at this point is, I think, what I and a lot of reviewers would probably describe Marathon as, but we'll get to the reviews in just a moment. Yeah, but the people who are playing it are very engaged. There hasn't really been a massive drop-off in players, even if it didn't spike quite that high.
Yeah, Marathon's daily active users on Steam have remained very consistent, sliding from about 478,000 on its first Saturday to averaging 380,000 over last weekend. That's really good, actually.
That is really good. Yeah, not the drop-off. I mean, other games as service games have much more severe drop-offs than that. And engagement mirrors platform sales, sort of. Steam players average 27.8 hours in the game, while PS5 and Xbox players average around 17 hours. So not only did it sell more on PC, but people are playing longer on PC as well.
Elliot also notices a lot of crossover with other Bungie titles. So on Steam, 78.2% of Marathon players have also played Destiny 2.
Yeah, that's extraordinarily high. Almost 80%, 4 out of 5 of all Marathon players played Destiny 2. I mean, I guess I'm one. Bruce, you're one. Yeah. It is a similar story on console as well on PS5 and Xbox, with 74.2% and 82.7% of players on each platform having also played Destiny 2 respectively.
That's a big win for Bungie, I would say, that they brought people over from Destiny 2, which is generally a PvE shooter, not always, but mostly, to Marathon, which is fully PvP.
Yeah, and very different kinds of games too. There's an adjustment period. I think every new player in Marathon, the second they see a robot, they start shooting at it, and then they see another robot and they shoot at that too, and then they see a third robot, and now they're out of bullets and they die. So it's very much not a Destiny experience, and yeah, a lot of people have to rip that Band-Aid off.
Yeah, that's true. For what it's worth, critics have finally posted the reviews, resulting in a Metacritic score for Marathon of 81. That's on PC.
Yes, reading the reviews is kind of fascinating too, because almost everyone, the high reviews and the low reviews, all agree it's really not welcoming to new players. The UI and the gameplay loops can be pretty brutal, but then it kind of diverges. The people who love it, or the masochistic gamers, I guess, have all given it very high marks for its atmosphere and things like that. I think other reviewers, it's pretty clear that they just kind of bounced out of it, saying that these barriers are too high for me to enjoy this game. But this is one of those situations where with most of the reviews, whether they rated it high or they rated it low, they're correct. This is a game of extremes.
Yeah, and Lawrence, I'm actually really excited to talk about Marathon with you, because you generally are not an extraction shooter type of guy. I played a lot of extraction shooters, and I kind of just, I run the gamut, and I generally enjoy them. I like Dark Raiders, I like Marathon, I like Tarkov, I liked them all. But you, for some reason, Marathon has really hooked you, and I'm really curious to hear why, as a new player of extraction shooters, Marathon got you.
Well, I'll say right off the top, the game's aesthetic is extremely appealing. The way it looks, the way it sounds. And then I started reading some of the lore, so weirdly that's become the motivating factor. A lot of the lore entries, and we're just talking like audio logs and pages, but you unlock those by doing particular feats in game. So I'm excited to learn more about the universe, and that's a good reward for me. But in terms of the gameplay loop, I think what Marathon did, what I've discovered about myself is it's not really the punishment of losing a run. I can swallow that pretty easily. It's the extreme amount of downtime in other extraction shooters that I could do without. And Marathon's pretty good about condensing that. So when I used to play PUBG, oh my gosh, it would be 30 minutes of nothing. Just like rooting maybe, but just like solid 10 minutes of sitting on a roof waiting because you heard a sound. Marathon has similar moments of tension, and its mechanics create very fascinating stories, whether I'm on the winning or losing side of those stories, but they happen so much faster. Matchmaking is starting to take a while, and that's kind of an annoyance, especially if I'm just matching solo queue. Having to wait a couple of minutes when I just suffered a bad beat and want to get back in there is kind of rough. But I think Marathon does a good job of eventually showing you how you win even if you lose, if that makes sense. So much like Arc Raiders, you can go in, do your mission tasks, get killed, but still exit and get progress out of it. Or they have the free kits and things like that to kind of take the sting off of losing a good kit. But they feed you enough gear on a pretty constant rate so that you don't really sweat losing mid-range gear too much. If your vault's full, then there's no reason to not take stuff into a run because you're just having to throw it away anyway. So, and the vault fills up pretty quick. So I think they hit these notes that if you react to them in the way that they want you to, then you start to settle into this flow that you change your mentality around it. And there's always something to do. So I think it's the intersection of those two things. I don't know, Bruce, what do you think about Marathon? Because yeah, they converted me. I want to see Cryo Archive, and I'm almost there on level, but I don't have the loadout to get there. So I got to start doing runs on Outpost and getting better guns and crap. I don't wanna, but I'll do it. Sorry, I keep ranting about Marathon, but yeah, Bruce, what do you think about Marathon? This
is really interesting to hear because hilariously they got you with the stuff that doesn't really matter about the extraction shooter. Like that's Arc Raiders and Marathon have really been trying to bring new players that have never played an extraction shooter before into the extraction shooter formula and giving you little quests and things like that to do make it feel like you're progressing in the game. You don't even care about the tension. That's hilarious. That's what everybody talks about the most with extraction shooters is the tension and like the gear fear of like, oh, I don't want to lose the thing that I'm finally bringing in, and that's what like supposedly everybody loves. I generally do not. That's actually why I like Arc Raiders and Marathon as well, and I would happily jump in with friends if they asked me to play. Whereas with Tarkov, I'm like, all right, I need a Sherpa. I need someone to come in and bring me all the gear. Like, there's no way I'm going in with a knife into Tarkov. Like, that sounds like just a nightmare, and I don't want that. But with but with Marathon or Arc Raiders, I'd be happy maybe even to go in by myself and like level up a little bit and kind of like, oh, I can run around and die. That's no big deal. I just don't want to be fodder in Tarkov, and that's kind of what I think Marathon and Arc Raiders have done really, really well, is that you don't necessarily feel like fodder. So it's really interesting to hear you talk about it, because generally speaking, you are not playing PvP games like this, especially when they first come out.
Oh, you're 100% right about that. Yeah, the moment I feel like in any multiplayer game that I am somebody else's game content, like I am the one getting fed to the player up on the food chain, then yeah, that's not fun for me, especially if I'm not learning anything in the process. But I think the thing about Marathon, even more so than Arc Raiders, I feel like, is that I feel that tension without the gear fear. I don't need the prospect of losing gear to affect the moment to moment. And I think Marathon's really good in its mechanics and its match flow of creating really tense moments. There's really good standoffs with other teams. I think the extremely fast TTK gives the game a very unique flavor, and it makes all those encounters just brutal knife fights. And I've seen some pretty big upsets in team fights too, where somebody's just looking the wrong way and all of a sudden the entire momentum of a team fight swaps. The fact that you can fully recover your team after most people are downed is also extremely cool. So I think that they've made certain tweaks to the extraction shooter formula as popularized by Arc Raiders, and certainly that was the first game that I started to resonate with. But I think Marathon really drilled into its rule set and figured out how to, through the flow of those rules, create these really high tension scenarios. And yeah, those are really exciting. But yeah, weirdly, the gear doesn't matter too much to me. I think that's because I haven't really gotten any good gear yet. And if I put in a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into one particular gun or something like that, my attitude would probably shift really quickly.
Now we can ask the billion-dollar question. We can finally speculate on whether or not we think Bungie is going to support Marathon with, a few players. I know that there are lots of players playing Marathon, but maybe not enough to maintain, Bungie inside of Sony.
I'm concerned about that. Yeah. And really, I have a lot of confusion around Marathon in general. As an individual, I think it's cool as hell that Bungie made such a hardcore video game. But why did Bungie make such a hardcore video game? They're technically not allowed to make games like that anymore after getting acquired. And I know this is an outsider perspective, but all indications are that they were acquired because of their games as service knowledge. So why would they then make the most hardcore, unappealing, kind of encouraging or not really destined for massive player type of game? If this is in an external narrative sense, if this game was supposed to justify why they were acquired, in addition to guiding PlayStation's games as service initiative that also just went completely belly up. Woo, I don't know, man. It kind of makes me. I'm similarly fascinated by this as I was by id Software making Doom Eternal. So they came off of 2016, which was a great throwback, great reinvention of a Doom formula, but they made it harder, they made it faster, they made it more mechanically complicated, which almost never happens in any sequel to anything ever. It's generally like, we want more sales, so we're going to make it simpler and easier. We're going to sand off the difficulty getting in there. To a degree, I think Bungie did that, but they did it. It's like they made a whole game around the endgame raid experience in Destiny. The most hardcore video gamey thing, which is totally my thing, of course. But why would they choose to make that unless they truly had the freedom and the runway to do whatever, and that's what they chose to do? And in a way, that's ballsy, and I like that. There's a lot of free will going in there, and it made a very beautiful game. But yeah, one that I understand a lot of people may not necessarily be into. So when it rolls back to, where's Bungie now? And are they in trouble, or what's their place in PlayStation? I'm a bit scared. I think that, they did their cryo archive unveil. They're basically like their fourth map. The game is still pretty content anemic, even though I really like the maps. They very clearly had a content plan for this. They had an ARGL baked into the game that they've been very slowly rolling out. But now that they've done this, I feel like they've basically hit that narrative beat that was sort of the teasing towards in their launch window. And if this didn't result in like a really ramp up of player engagement and players, what do they do next? I guess now maybe they pivot to trying to make the game a little more easy and approachable. And maybe they launch a new map that's even easier than Perimeter for new players to come into. Or maybe just a solo, maybe a PvE map. I'm curious. I feel like we've mused a lot about this. How can games as service launch without any kind of runway? I hope that the performance they have, which again I have to assume is not nearly what they wanted, but is not nothing. I hope that it's enough to buy them maybe 6 months. And in that 6 months, they can plan one big update to the game that's like a, please come back and try it, or maybe a new free weekend when this update launches. Hey, we have a new map, we have a PvE experience until you hit level 10, and then we're going to start like shoving you into PvP or something like that. I think things like that could give the game another shot. I'm not sure that it's going to succeed even with that on the order that we assume PlayStation needs it to succeed. So, man, it's going to hurt me if this game goes offline. This is luckily maybe Stop Killing Games can step in and keep a lifeline open, but there was a lot of effort and a lot of cool work that went into this game, and I hope that it stays available in some form or fashion. Yeah,
this is going to be really interesting, because if this game had launched like Tarkov did with Battlestate games, because Battlestate, they're indie, right? They were just like, okay, we'll start this genre basically, and then just sort of build it up as we went. And now Tarkov is a monster. But it wasn't like that in whatever 2017, 2018, whenever they launched Tarkov. They really started the whole genre. If Marathon had been, let's say Bungie was still even indie, if Marathon had been able to launch with Bungie as indie, then they probably could have kept going and like been like, all right, well, when we maintain Marathon, we go forever. Hell, even if Sony said, you know what, we don't want you anymore, Bungie, and then Bungie split off on their own and then still maintain Marathon at like with a lighter crew, they could do that too. But being at Sony, I think is very bad for Marathon, and Marathon really needs to bring in a lot more players quickly, and I don't know how they're going to do that unless they launch PvE mode, sort of like Tarkov did, or something like that. Like that, I would be willing to come back to Marathon and play regularly if there was PvE, and that's something that like I would happily do with you or just by myself. Because, like you said, Lawrence, it would be a real shame to see Marathon go down. I really think this game is made up of lots of developers that really cared about what they were making. It's very clear. Like it's very clear that this game is something that they really loved and something that I really love going into and playing. Even if I die, I was still like, man, this is really cool though. It's really, really neat. And I don't want to see Marathon go away. I don't want to see good games like this go away. So I'm hoping that that Sony gives this game a year. I want to say a year of breathing room will really solidify a good audience that hopefully they don't over monetize.
Yeah, they've taken a lighter touch and even backed off on some of the monetization. And this game's not free to play, so they have revenue. They have, I think it was like 55 million in estimated revenue. So that's not nothing, and I would like to think that that'll buy them at least a year. Maybe 6 months to prove any kind of upward trajectory in key metrics. But yeah, Bruce, I agree. I think the tragedy of it is Marathon is a very efficient game, which again is weird for how much money Bungie theoretically had during the development of this game. I don't know what the team size on it was. I'd like to... Playing the end result, which again, I said map content is a bit anemic, but the maps themselves, I understand, take a lot of work. But all the other anecdotal stuff to the game, you could add new lore, new load screens, skins. Like they very clearly know how to establish a content pipeline that they can monetize, and the content that they feed into that pipeline is very efficient. So, kind of like you said, I would like to think that they have a business model for Marathon where it's not nearly as expensive to operate as other games as service games, and that they can continue giving it this feeling of freshness and newness, all the while not having hundreds of developers constantly having to crank out assets that people just grind through and forget about immediately. So yes, I would like to think that there's a way that this game can operate efficiently, but still, I have this tugging feeling in the back of my head that even if it operates efficiently, it'll never operate at the scale that PlayStation as a publisher expects out of their games. And that worries me too, because PlayStation feels like they've been tightening their belts lately. It feels like they just have no appetite for a boutique game that does something cool, but for a small audience. They used to do that kind of stuff all the time, but then they shut down all the studios that were making those games. So they're focusing on blockbusters now, which they make good blockbusters, so there's that. But also, yes, this game is neat, but falls completely outside of their portfolio.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So I'm crossing my fingers for Marathon. Even though I don't play it a lot, I really do hope that they succeed, and I hope they get to keep all their players, and all their players get to keep playing Marathon, because it's great. It's a great game. Thank you very much for watching Inside Games today. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. I don't know if you've already done that, or if you've made it to the very end of the video. Please subscribe. That would be fantastic. And then also, we have a Patreon as well. That's only if you've watched a lot of our videos and you like listening to us talk. Then maybe you could give us $5 a month to let us continue to talk, which is something that we both love to do about video games.